I arrived early. That's something I always do, part habit, part hope. I stepped out of the car slow, careful not to catch the hem of my dress on the edge of the door. My Sunday hat, the one I only wear for special church services and funerals, sat just right. I'd spent the night before ironing every crease, making sure it looked worthy of this day. In my hands, I held a gift wrapped in cloth I embroidered myself, roses stitched into a linen handkerchief, just like the ones my mother used to carry. The sun in the garden district was already high, casting gold on the iron gates and bright white chairs. Bougainvillea wrapped the columns, and everything looked picture perfect. I paused at the entrance, breathing in jasmine and some invisible weight I couldn't shake off. I expected someone to greet me, maybe someone from Silas' fiancé's family. But the young man standing by the sign-in table barely looked at me. "You here for the staff orientation?" he asked, eyes flicking over my hat, my dress, the gift in my hands. "I'm Marcy. Mother of the groom," I said, steady but not cold. He blinked, caught off guard, then smiled like he'd been corrected in public. "Right this way, ma'am." The way he said ma'am, like I was the help. I've heard that tone before, 100 times, in places I didn't belong. But this was different. This was my son's wedding. The sign-in table was draped in ivory, with delicate calligraphy name tags laid in rows. The woman behind it looked up, gave me a polite smile. "Name, please?" "Marcy Hawthorne." She scanned the list, tapped a pen against her lips. Let's see, Marcella Hawthorne." She turned the paper toward me like that'd settle it. I nodded once, correcting softly, "It's Marcy Hawthorne, with an E." "Oh, sorry. Guess there was a typo in the system." Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Then she leaned in and asked, quiet, "Are you with catering?" I swallowed hard. That gift in my hand suddenly felt heavier than a brick. "No. I'm the groom's mother." "Oh," she said, all flustered, waving me through like I was an unexpected guest at a party I paid for. I walked in, slow. People milled about, champagne flutes in hand, soft jazz playing. The bride's family stood in little circles, laughing loud, hugging long. The kind of warmth that said welcome home. Nobody looked my way. I scanned the room for Silas. My son. My baby. He stood by the arbor, laughing with his future in-laws, his smile wide, his suit sharp. I watched his eyes dance across the room, never landing on me. I sat near the window, on the edge, away from the action. A chair by the door, like I was waiting to leave before I even arrived. A woman near the buffet whispered to her friend, "That must be someone from church." I wasn't surprised. I've spent a lifetime being mistaken for less than what I am. Mother. Provider. Protector. Ghost. I remembered the invitation when it first hit my inbox, no call, no note, just an email with my name under +1. Not even mother of the groom. I told myself maybe it was a mistake. Kids these days, always doing things different. But my heart? It whispered, they meant that. Even now, my name wasn't right. Not even enough to get spelled correctly. And still, I smiled. I kept smiling like I'd been taught. Pride runs deep, but it runs quiet. I watched Silas take pictures, pose, hug strangers. I remembered working doubles, coming home with swollen feet, saving every penny so he could go to college, leave the city, chase a future. I prayed over that boy. Now he didn't see me. Or maybe he saw me and chose not to. Something inside me shifted then. Not anger, recognition. This wasn't just a celebration. This was a ceremony of forgetting. The jazz played on. My gift sat unopened on the auxiliary table. My seat stayed near the door, like I'd never truly been invited in. I looked at Silas one last time and thought, they not only rewrote tradition, they're rewriting me out of it. The sun dipped lower, dragging long shadows across the reception lawn. Folks clinked glasses, napkins tucked into collars, laughter spilling under strings of white lights. I sat right where they left me, by the window, a half-finished plate of salad in front of me, the embroidered gift still resting in my purse. No one invited me to the family table. Not a glance, not a gesture. They had their perfect picture, their curated circle, and I wasn't in it. I watched as the bride's folks took the microphone one by one. Big, booming voices. Thanking everyone who helped raise such a wonderful young man. They called out teachers, coaches, distant cousins, but never once turned toward me. I kept smiling, nodding like I was some visiting neighbor who'd wandered in. Someone I recognized leaned down and whispered, "Why aren't you up there with the family?" I just waved it off. There was no sense explaining a wound while it was still bleeding. Inside, I was folding in on myself, shrinking smaller with each cheer that excluded me. The kind of silence that makes your bones heavy. I'd raised that boy. Scrubbed floors and took double shifts so he could wear clean shoes to school. Now I sat in the back, like a guest of the caterer. Then came her toast. Vivian rose like a swan, elegant and poised in her ivory gown. Her voice carried, soft but sharp, the kind of tone that commands a room without raising itself. She thanked everyone, by name. Her parents, her bridesmaids, the pastor, even the florist. Then she said it. To those who truly raised Silas with love, wisdom, and grace, you know who you are. There was a pause. The kind that stretches just enough for meaning to settle. Some folks looked around. A few chuckled, unsure. One woman glanced at me, then away quick like she'd done something wrong just by catching my eye. I reached for my water, my hand trembling ever so slightly. But my face, stone still. Years of being passed over had taught me to hold my hurt like it was glass in a crowded room. Tight. Careful. Don't let it fall. I turned to Silas. Maybe he'd stand, say something. Maybe he'd shake his head, laugh it off, wrap an arm around me and pull me into the light where mothers belong. But he just smiled. Laughed. Clinked his glass to hers. Didn't even look my way. And right then, I saw two versions of him in my mind. The boy with the busted arm at 9, calling out for mama in the emergency room, tears on his cheeks. And the man in front of me now, polished and distant, letting me get erased like chalk in rain. I didn't cry. I stood. Quiet. My chair scraped the floor, not loud, but loud enough. Heads turned. Some guests shifted in their seats, unsure what to do with this part of the show. Vivian smiled. Not wide, not cruel. Just satisfied. I walked out slow. No stomping, no scene. Just me, my back straight, my dignity folded neatly in every step. Outside, the breeze caught the hem of my dress. The stone bench by the garden fountain was empty, so I sat there and let the silence settle over me. A thought rose up from deep inside, clear and steady. Sometimes, the loudest message is walking away without a word. My hand brushed the edge of my purse, where the gift still rested. No one had asked for it. No one had earned it. I stared out at the trees swaying gentle in the late afternoon light, the buzz of the reception soft behind the glass. Then I heard footsteps. Heavy. Slow. Coming toward me, not Silas's. Older. Familiar in a way that made my spine straighten. The light had shifted when I stepped outside. The afternoon had cooled, and shadows stretched longer than the day before. I walked past the pillars, through the garden path, until I reached a stone bench near the fountain. I sat and let my shoulders heavy, though I tried to breathe lighter. The clink of glasses, laughter, soft music behind the walls, they all felt distant, as though from another life. Footsteps approached on the gravel. I looked up, startled to see Uncle Ray standing a few paces away, his gray hair catching the last sunlight. He sat without a word, placed a folded letter in his lap, and his presence felt like gravity, quiet, sure. I waited. He waited. Nothing moved but the leaves overhead. Finally he spoke, his voice low, "You raised him right. They just twisted him wrong." I swallowed, letting his words sink. He wore a calm mask, but his hands trembled just a little as he unfolded the note. I didn't ask what it was. I just watched. He told me what he'd heard 2 months ago, Vivian, in hushed tones with her mother, referring to me as a threat to their plans. He said I'd been an inconvenience from the start, someone meant to be quiet, out of sight. The wedding, he said, was never just about love. It was about image. Control. Keeping me out of frame. That confession landed cold. I felt the hurt knot inside, prickling, sharp. But I also felt clarity. I had been isolated, yes. But not by accident. That thought cut deep. I looked at Uncle Ray, and he nodded as though reading what I'd refused to speak. Don't go down silent. I replayed memories, small slights, invitations lost in transit, smiles that passed through my face without seeing me. I thought of Silas and how he changed, how our conversations grew shorter, how distance settled and where understanding used to live. I unwrapped the embroidered gift then. My hands were steady. The linen felt heavier than I remembered. I traced the tree, the roots, Silas's birthdate in golden thread. It was truth. It was me. And it was being used against me. I left it there on the bench beside Ray, letting the weight of it hang in the air. Quietly I whispered, let her see what she tried to erase. My eyes filled, but I didn't let tears fall. I walked to my car, each step a decision. My fingers hovered over the door handle when Ray's voice called after me, "You sure you want to let this slide?" I froze, heart pounding. I turned, hands still on the handle, and saw someone in my rearview mirror, eyes wide, waving. I didn't go far from the garden bench, just far enough to breathe without eyes on me. The side porch behind the reception hall was half-lit, wooden boards worn smooth by time. I stood there for a moment, hands resting on the rail, listening to muffled laughter inside. Every clink of glass, every cheer felt like it belonged to someone else's life. Mine was on the other side of the wall, quiet, unseen. I eased into one of the rocking chairs, the kind that creaked on every sway, and stared out over the lawn. That housage had once felt like a second home when Silas was little, weddings, baptisms, Sunday socials. Funny how places don't change, only the people inside do. Through the window, I saw him, my son, laughing along with the bride's people, arm around her father. I thought of the day I bought him his first suit, how he said, "Mama, one day I'll take care of you." I held on to that memory until it frayed. Uncle Ray came quietly, like he'd always walked with storms in his shoes. He didn't speak at first. Just set a glass of iced tea on the table beside me. "Sugar's already in," he muttered, settling into the chair next to mine. I nodded, eyes still fixed on the lawn. After a long silence, he said, "You don't owe nobody an apology for existing. They want you quiet so they won't have to face who gave them everything." That sat heavy. I felt something shift inside me, not anger, not yet. But something firmer. A boundary. No more apologizing for breathing. Voices rose inside the hall. Another speech. I couldn't see them, but I heard her, Vivian's mother. My daughter, she started, voice dripping pride, has been blessed with strong guidance from those who raised Silas into the man he is. Each name flowed, teachers, mentors, church leaders. My name never came. The omission wasn't careless, it was crafted. A neat erasure. Someone inside must have noticed, because I heard a sharp breath, a rustle. Even silence can ache. I leaned back, eyes fixed on nothing. A verse I hadn't thought of in years surfaced, let your deeds praise you in the gates. Maybe my deeds would never be spoken in rooms like that. But they were stitched in bone. I rose from the porch, my steps slow. Not defeated. Deciding. Halfway across the veranda, I found Odessa standing by the lantern post, arms crossed, eyes sharp. She looked me full in the face, the way no one else had all day. They taught you to step back so long, she said softly, they forgot you know how to step forward. Her words cracked something open. I felt it. I nodded, not in agreement, but acknowledgement. I wasn't disappearing. Not tonight. I walked back through the side entrance. The ballroom lights spilled over me, but this time I didn't skirt the edges. My stride was measured, unhurried. I passed Vivian's table and, without a word, slipped the embroidered linen into her designer bag. Let her carry what she tried to bury. When I looked up, Silas was watching. Not with anger, not with love, something in between. An unsettled recognition. A memory of someone he hadn't seen in years, his mother with a spine. I took my place, not at a table, but near the walkway stage, where every camera could find me whether they wanted to or not. I didn't speak. I just stood. Present. Undeniable. Behind me, I heard it, murmured, thin as smoke, she's moving in dangerous ways now. A camera flashed. Someone had decided I was worth capturing again. I didn't move far from where I stood near the stage. I knew they saw me, Vivian, Silas, the whole room. I let them. That was the point. I wasn't shrinking tonight. I stayed, not with pride, but with purpose. The dance floor thinned, the music slowed, and guests began drifting out. But I remained. Present. Steady. A young server approached, hesitant, holding a small plate. Would you like one? He asked, voice unsure but kind. I looked at the plate, cake, strawberries, a little folded napkin, and smiled. Yes, I said. Yes, I would. He nodded like it mattered, and in that small moment, I felt it shift. A gesture, maybe meaningless to him, but to me? It meant I deserved to be served too. After a full day of being invisible, that plate was a quiet restoration. I moved toward the cake table, not looking for trouble, but not avoiding it either. Vivian's laugh caught in my ear, too loud, too bright, like she'd already moved on from the mess she'd made. She didn't know I was still there. I took one breath. Then another. Then I walked right to her. She was holding court, surrounded by friends and family, champagne glass in hand, glowing with victory. But when I stepped into her circle, that glow dimmed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't call her out. I didn't even smile. Vivian, I said. She turned slowly, trying to mask surprise, but the flicker in her eyes gave her away. I see what you're doing, I said evenly. And I'm not afraid of being the only one who sees it. Her lips parted, maybe to respond, but I didn't give her room. No need to pretend, I said. I know the game. And I'm not playing by silence anymore. Someone behind her coughed. Another sipped their drink faster. I leaned in slightly, just enough for her to hear, but not enough to invite drama. Grace ain't weakness, baby. It's just patience. With a longer fuse. Her eyes dropped, even if just for a second. That was enough. From the corner of my eye, I saw Silas approaching. He looked tired. Maybe confused. Maybe guilty. But not surprised. He stopped beside her. "Mom," he said, trying to smile, trying to make it all lighter. But I didn't let him. Not this time. "You've built something here," I said calmly. "But if the foundation is disrespect, it's already cracking." He blinked, caught between the man he's become and the child I raised. I didn't cry. Didn't plead. I just looked him in the eye like a man. Like I raised a man. Don't assume because I've been quiet, I've been blind. I turned my eyes back to her. "You wanted me gone. But if you push any further, I won't just leave. I'll uncover." The air turned still. No one moved. No one dared break the moment. Then I turned and walked away. Not rushed. Not angry. Balanced. Near the punch table, a few older guests had been watching. One leaned to another and said under her breath, "That's the mama right there." I didn't need validation. I didn't need cheers. That moment wasn't about them. I wrapped my shawl tighter around my shoulders and made my way to the front door. Each step felt like reclaiming ground I never should have had to fight for. Just as I pushed through the doors, a voice came from behind me. A voice I didn't expect. "Ms. Richards, wait, I need to show you something about your son." I froze. My hand still on the door. I turned slowly. The look on her face said this wasn't small. She held her phone like it was shaking. And the way her voice cracked? I knew, whatever it was, I needed to see it. The night had settled into that hazy hour when the music softens and faces grow tired. The crowd was thinning, dresses gathered at the hem, men loosening ties. I thought the worst of the storm had passed, until I saw Silas and Vivian take their place near the dessert table, a new toast in motion. I stayed where I was, arms folded loosely, not hiding, not invading. Just holding ground. Vivian touched his arm, guiding him forward with that polished smile she reserves for theatrics. He cleared his throat. Glasses stilled. Conversations halted. I didn't yet know they were about to turn the blade. "Mom," he began. It was the first time he'd addressed me all night. For a moment, just a second, I felt something in my chest unlock. But then he kept talking. "All my life," he said, voice smooth and practiced, "you questioned everything I did. You never praised. You kept me small." There were murmurs. A rolling hush. Someone gasped. I didn't move. Didn't blink. His words echoed between us, twisting into something unrecognizable. He wasn't just disappointed, he was rewriting history. Publicly. "I'm tired of that energy," he finished. "Tonight is about love. Not control. Love. Not control." I didn't answer. I didn't even frown. I only searched his eyes, hoping to find the boy I once raised buried behind that speech. But he wasn't there. Not tonight. I held my silence, not from weakness, but because I knew anything I said would be fed to their narrative. So I stood, breathing slow, every heartbeat a drum in my ears. Then I saw it. On the cake table, a woman was unwrapping something with delight. Linen. Gold thread. My stitching. The tree. My gift. She held it up like treasure. Look what Vivian's aunt made. Isn't it beautiful? Aunt. My stomach tightened, not from shock, but from confirmation. They hadn't just erased me. They'd taken my offering and repurposed it, like a prop. Claimed it without a blink. I stepped forward, calm as winter. Crossed the room without hurry. No one stopped me. No one dared. I reached the table, looked at the linen in the woman's hands, then took it gently. Funny, I said, how a gift meant for love is being used for a story. Silence collapsed around us. No one moved. No one breathed. I traced the roots I had stitched, the gold threads glinting under chandeliers, then laid it flat on the table for all to see. You took what I made, I said, voice low but clear, claimed it, and sold it as your own. That's not generosity. That's theft. A flash went off. Someone took a picture. Let them. I didn't wait for apologies. I didn't want them. I turned and walked away, not toward the exit, but toward air, toward thought. Outside, I found the same bench, but it felt different now. Heavier. Like it was waiting to hold the weight I'd finally allowed myself to feel. I sank onto it. No tears. Just hurt refining into steel. Silence can be complicit. Uncle Ray's words returned. Let them use the lies, they'll choke on them. I drew in a breath and pulled out my phone. Trent, I typed. Check your email. I need you awake. The ballroom lights flickered in the distance. Behind the glass, I saw Vivian looking out, her smile thinning. My phone buzzed. A single file name appeared. Unearthed_agreements.pdf. My hands did not tremble. I already knew it was mine. But I clicked anyway. When I walked back into that room, I wasn't the same woman who had slipped out through the side door. Trent walked beside me, calm, precise, holding a leather folder tucked under one arm like a surgeon walking into a waiting room. The kind of quiet that follows an earthquake settled over the hall. Folks were still milling around, buzzing low about what had just happened, but when they saw me, and the look I carried now, a hush spread. We didn't say a word. Not until Quentin stepped forward, Vivian's daddy, always one for showmanship. He raised his voice to welcome everyone back to the spotlight. Then Trent moved. He reached the center, unfolded a single sheet of paper, and clicked a remote. A projection screen came alive above the dessert table. Words in bold. Property lines. Dates. Signatures. Ladies and gentlemen, Trent said, measured, these are public records from the clerk's office. What you're seeing is a transfer of deed on land originally owned by Ms. Richards, transferred without consent, notarized under false pretense. Gasps. Soft but sharp. Paper whispers began to snake through the room. I kept my eyes on Silas. He blinked. His mouth parted, just a little. Not rage. Not even guilt. Just confusion. Like he was standing in someone else's story. My heart didn't swell. My breath didn't quicken. But something deep in my gut steadied. I saw my name on those documents, scratched out in process, overwritten by hands I once trusted. Trent spoke again. All signatures presented were digitally traced. There was no formal power of attorney. No court validation. This was theft masked as formality. I watched Vivian from the corner of my eye. She wasn't fidgeting. She wasn't reacting. She just stared at the floor, arms crossed like stone. Until the past showed up. Bennett walked in through the side entrance like he'd been waiting his turn. Sharp jacket, clean speech, no extra drama. He stood near the bar and said, "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have something to add." The room held its breath. I was with Vivian for 4 years. You don't know me, but I knew her before this. She manipulated my savings account, framed an eviction notice I never signed, and used that to push me out. He reached in his coat and held up his phone. These messages, they're not about love. They're about rewriting history. He turned to Silas. Don't let her rewrite yours. She already did mine. Vivian finally looked up, and her face cracked just enough for the room to see the mask slip. That was all I needed. I walked forward, slow, deliberate. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I didn't play to the crowd. I stopped near the dance floor and said, loud enough to carry. You manipulated my life. You took my name. You erased me piece by piece. And you thought no one would notice. But now. I turned to Silas, reached into my shawl, and pulled out the embroidered linen. This, I said, was mine. My hands made it. My love shaped it. And I'm reclaiming what's mine. I placed it in his hands. Then I crossed the velvet rope they had once placed to keep the wedding party exclusive. My back stayed straight. My breath calm. My steps clean. No one tried to stop me. No one even spoke. I wasn't an outsider anymore. I wasn't a shadow in their story. I had become a center they could no longer ignore. Outside, the night had cooled. The stars blinked down with a kind of knowing quiet. I walked into the terrace garden, heels crunching softly on gravel, breath finally catching up to my pace. I sat. Closed my eyes. Let every insult, every omission, every fake smile flow past me, not as wounds, but as coordinates. They hadn't buried me. They had mapped me. And I had followed every mark back to myself. Ray came out a few minutes later. They've seen the mask slip, he said, voice quiet. I nodded. This ain't about proving them wrong anymore, I said. It's about proving me right. He nodded, then left me to the stillness. And just when I thought the night was finished, I saw Silas step out. His hands were shaking slightly. Not from fear, but uncertainty. He looked like a man waking up in the middle of someone else's nightmare. He held something, a paper, folded, but creased at the corners. Mom, he called out, slow. They told me something I can't ignore. I took that slow walk back into the ballroom like a woman who knew her truth didn't need to be shouted. The music had softened into background chatter. Tables were half empty. Guests lingered, but their eyes weren't dancing anymore, they were waiting. I didn't need a spotlight, but they gave me one. As I stepped toward the mic stand near the dessert table, a few folks clapped. Not many. Just enough to say, we see you. I nodded once. My hands didn't tremble. I cleared my throat. But before I could speak, before I got out a single word, the mic popped. Screeched. Then died. Lights overhead flickered. Some guests gasped. One woman whispered, they did that on purpose. I didn't flinch. I stayed right there, hands still on the stand, chin up. If this was sabotage, they underestimated what silence could do. A hush settled again, heavier than before. Inside, my thoughts stirred like water over fire. You ever been so ignored, so overwritten, so erased that the quiet starts to feel like violence? I stood in that stillness like it was armor. And I thought, even when I had no voice, I never lost my truth. Behind me, Trent stepped in like a dance partner knowing the next move. No words. Just action. He tapped his laptop. The projector screen behind me lit up. Photos. But not the glossy, polished kind they'd plastered earlier in the night. These were different. Real. There I was, holding newborn Silas, my hair tied back, sweat on my brow. There I was, fixing his bow tie before kindergarten graduation. There I was, feeding him soup on the couch with a cold rag across his forehead. Side by side, the doctored slideshow Vivian had played earlier appeared next to the real one. Erased photos. Cropped faces. Entire years missing. Gone. Gasps floated through the crowd. I walked slowly along the front row, pointing quietly as the images flipped. This one, I said, tapping a frame. They removed me. Another, I nodded at. That day, he had a fever. She wasn't even in the house. The room shifted like a tide changing course. Heads turned. People looked at Vivian, then back to the screen. They saw it. The revision. The theft. One woman near the back whispered to no one in particular, "She's always been the one behind him." A man from Vivian's side cleared his throat like he was about to argue, but no sound followed. Too many eyes. Too much truth laid bare. Silas stood in the center now, the only one not looking away. His eyes tracked every photo. Every memory. His face said it all. He had questions. Deep ones. But not for me. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't cry. Didn't break. I just walked back to my seat. That walk was mine. Every click of my heel across the floor was louder than applause. When I sat, Odessa reached for my hand. Ray gave the slightest nod, like a man who'd seen storms before and knew this one was passing. They didn't need to say it. I'd won something bigger than pride. I had turned their silence against them. They tried to bury me in whispers. But truth? Truth blooms loud. The music started up again, timid at first. People tried to return to normal, but nothing felt the same. Just as I reached for my glass, a waiter came toward me. Neatly folded cloth in his hand. My gift. The embroidered linen. Clean. Ironed. Unmistakably mine. He placed it before me. I looked up and saw Vivian standing behind him. Eyes wide. Lips slightly parted. She hadn't expected me to take it back. But I had. By the time the wedding ended, the ballroom felt like an echo chamber. All the noise had drained out, but the tension lingered like smoke on clothes long after the fire's gone out. I didn't wait for farewells. Didn't look back when I walked out. I'd already buried what needed burying. I didn't go back to my old house. That house wasn't a home anymore, it was a museum of disappointment. I'd rented a small place out past Atlanta, tucked under trees where you could hear the wind, not traffic. Quiet had never been my comfort before. Now, it felt like balm. Boxes sat untouched near the back wall. I didn't rush. That silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of space I'd earned. Sitting on the porch with a chipped mug of tea, I whispered to myself, sometimes the biggest act of rebellion is to not show up where you ain't wanted no more. That truth sat on my lap heavier than the Bible I held, but lighter than the weight I'd been carrying for years. That night, I started unpacking. Not just clothes. Years. Memories. Truth. Tucked between the last pages of my Bible was an envelope I didn't recognize. Yellowed. Handwritten. Familiar script. My breath caught. I opened it slow, paper soft like it had been touched too many times but never read. It was from Silas's father. Dated over 20 years ago. His words weren't perfect. But they were real. He spoke of how we fell apart, how much of it was his fault, and how sorry he was for not protecting me better. But what broke me was the part about Silas. He's yours. Not just by blood, but spirit. Don't let nobody rewrite that, even him. They'll try. But don't let em. I cried. Not like a storm, not loud. Just the kind that sneaks up on you, wets your shirt collar, and eases the edge off your shoulders. That letter didn't fix anything. But it came right on time. The next morning, I brewed coffee, then walked 3 blocks to the local youth center. I'd promised to teach the girls how to sew. We threaded needles and told stories between stitches. There was something about showing young girls how to mend torn things that felt holy. Odessa came by every Saturday. Peach cobbler in hand, gossip in her mouth. We sat on the porch, chewing and chuckling, and for once, the laughter didn't feel like it was covering anything. I started writing again. Just little things at first. Thoughts, memories. Then pages. My story, uncut, unedited, mine. Peace ain't quiet. It's alignment. One morning, the phone rang. I didn't rush to answer. Let it ring once. Twice. Then I picked up. His voice was small. Mama, I saw everything. I didn't say anything. I didn't know, he continued. I didn't want to believe her, but I did. And I'm sorry. I didn't let silence hang like guilt. I just spoke soft but clear. Come when you ready. My door ain't locked but I ain't waitin' at it either. He paused. Then chuckled, low, cracked. Yes, ma'am. After that call, I sat back outside. The sun slid lower behind the trees. In my lap, the Bible again. And that letter. Folded, smoothed out like something sacred. For the first time in decades, I breathed in and let it all out, fully. I wasn't waiting to be seen no more. I saw me. And that was enough. I ain't just a guest in my life now. I'm the host.